Kellyanne is here. Oh, you got to come in, Kellyanne. Nice to see you. Kellyanne, this is my wife, Ann.
How are you? Did you ask Bannon the question?
Well, we love having you here.
Nice
We did ask Bannon the question. He was right in the basement.
What did he
when
say?
You asked it, I said to him, here's Kellyanne's question. He heard it live on the air.
I said you could ask him.
I said, what's the deal with all these people? He said, well, I wasn't really focused on that.
Really?
I said, well, that was your job, she said.
He wasn't focused on that.
He said something like that. He said he wasn't focused on that.
Really?
But,
he had a seat on the NSC.
I know. He said he wasn't really focused on it. Yeah. And we have repeated your question, I don't know, about 100 times. We were right there with him in the basement. So you had to be there because we're in his basement. I set the show up there.
I don't have to be there.
I know,
but go ahead.
I mean, I'm just saying. And we asked the question, and he's there. And we have it on the air. And
then he invited me on the show the same day.
Like, Steve, Kellyanne said, how'd you let all these
I said
people
it very
get through?
nicely. I just said,
You were very nice.
I said, why did you ask Steve? I said, why did you ask Steve? He and two other people, Reince and Jared, his friends, were in charge of that.
That's right.
They excluded everybody else. They fired Chris Christie. They threw his binders in the trash can.
You're right.
And they fired Chris Christie, put Pence in so they can run it, and then they went off to hiring people. I mean, some of the hires were
they're hiring people that don't support her agenda. That's his agenda. But yeah, we did ask him that. We never really got a straight answer.
And he had a seat on the NSC. Wait till the president found that out. He took him off the NSC. But you're talking about why are these people working in the NSC? And I said, ask the only guy who was both in charge of these hires and had a seat on the NSC.
Yeah. I mean, that was his job, right? I mean, to be sure to vet the people that went in there. Obviously, he didn't do it. But anyway, great question. But then
he was focused on lying in books about himself and everyone else. That's what he was focused on.
Well, that book was.
No, not that book. Lots of books.
Yeah. So was he leaking stuff there?
I'm not saying you live in his house.
No, I live
in someone else owns.
I live in Lewandowski's house, but I do my show there.
That's pretty obvious that you're with Corey all the time.
Yes, it is. I like Corey.
I love Corey, but I'm not obsequious. Are we on the air?
Yes, you're live. Hey, Corey's going to run for U.S. Senate in New Hampshire. What do you think?
Well, I love Corey. Corey's my friend, and he's an immense political talent. And he should do what he wants to do. But I think that regardless of whether Corey runs for Senate in New Hampshire, where he would put that race into play, I expect Corey will have a very big platform and a very big voice going into 2020 because he's one of the few people, and it's an ever-shrinking number, one of the few people who gets President Trump, was there by his side for the whole first year plus of the campaign, had a great deal to do with putting President Trump in a position that candidate Trump could do what he wanted to do and run the campaign the way he wanted to run it, without the usual consultants in your ear and saying, no, you must do this, you must do that. So I really credit the folks who were around the president in those early days. And then we finished the job for him later on. But you're talking about friends of mine who I've worked with over time. I just think in the case of Steve, he should just be more honest. I mean, he had an NSC seat, and they excluded a lot of us from personnel decisions during transition. Reince, Jared, and Bannon made those decisions together. They act like they never met each other now. And they took that circus into the White House here too. And it's a shame because I think we're still paying the price for a lot of things that were done and not done in those first 6 months.
And then also
those of us who are still here, it's a shrinking number.
So what happens? I mean, what are the things that we're concerned about, Kellyanne? And I know you get this: 4,000 political appointees available, right? That's what's available. We filled about, 1,000, 1,500, something like that. Half of them that we filled, not supporters of the president. I read Nikki Haley's book over the weekend. Shocking, but not stunning, okay? So a lot of
In what regard? Because I didn't read it. What are you referring to?
She basically said that General Kelly had no interest in moving the president's agenda forward.
Well, then I certainly hope she said that to the chief of staff at the time and to the president himself.
Don't know. I mean, she is selling books.
At the time. That's what I'll say. And as somebody who's still here and will continue to be here.
Been here from the beginning.
In the beginning. And will continue to be here. let me just say that personnel is policy. President Reagan was right. And this president does not want all 4,000 jobs. I mean, draining the swamp also means that you're trying to get rid of those duplicative jobs or those jobs that are not fair to the taxpayer, frankly. But again, I think the people who made decisions early on and who were delegated and deputized to make decisions early on by those who thought they had a lot of power here have left us in very different situations. I think that's incredibly unfair to President Trump, who trusts people around him to fully brief him, to equip him, to give him the information he needs to make the right decisions. Also, I want to tell you something that doesn't get enough coverage, and it's this. I'll just say, in the main, generally speaking, without specifying any individual case, some people can't pass a vet, John. Some people can't get through the front door. They just can't. There are many different reasons that you would be denied access
Social media,
to many
DUI.
things. Many things. And so, you can go and read these
many things.
ungodly forms we all fill out to get here and to stay here. And even those forms are prohibitive to some people. They say, oh, geez, it's just like we say politics because you have to have fire in your belly, but now you have to have bile in your throat. It's the same thing now with some of these jobs. It's just people say, well, I don't want a job like that. I have to reveal everything. I have to sell my company. The Senate confirmed positions, people say, gosh, the president nominated me 2 years ago. I'm still sitting here, and I dissolved my business. I sold my shares. My kids' trusts had to move around. I mean,
plus it's hundreds of $1,000s in legal fees.
Correct.
To get through the Senate.
For the quote privilege of serving, and it is a privilege to serve. I'll tell you that. That's why I'm here. I think it's great. It's enormous financial and personal sacrifice, but this is the United States of America, and this is President Trump, and the combination is so riveting to me that we can actually work with a velocity and a volume that is not everybody's cup of tea. I mean, most people just can't cut it for very long for any number of reasons or get through the front door in the first place. But in fairness to the process, you should know that there are people that you and I don't even know who may have made great assistant secretary this or White House that, who for any number of reasons could not pass the vetting.
Couldn't get through the process. Right, so
and no help on the outside. That's okay.
But a lot of our people, it's been tougher though, because I had Secretary Zinke on, Commander Zinke, the other day, who said Udall, Obama Secretary of Interior, filled his entire staff in 3 weeks. He was there a year, and he had 15% done. Like, what was the difference? And he said he just couldn't get his people through, not vetted, whatever. Didn't have enough people. Some that were there got fired because things would come out, media would do hit pieces on them.
Yeah.
But but he said under Obama, Udall, 3 weeks staffed, 100%. When the landing teams were going, and I said this earlier, people were telling me they were going in the offices in the agencies, Kellyanne, Conway, and they would have people there that had a cubicle, a phone, no computer, no job, but were getting paid.
Right. Well, that we don't need. No wonder they staff up so quickly.
I know, right?
Define staffing up. I mean, it's just if we're bloating the boat, the USA boat of people not doing jobs. As I said before, the president wants to get rid of this expansive, expensive, intrusive, invasive federal government with these duplicative jobs, and that's what he wants to do. Now, I do think there are jobs left for those who would like to serve. And I think there's, with an election re-election on the horizon and a lot of liberty and freedom on the outside of helping the president put forth his agenda or help him get reelected. Those are incredibly important positions also. It is. And, working in government it's not as a natural fit for many conservatives. We're limited government people, as it is for sort of the pro-big government Obama folks who are like, work in Washington. Great, no-show job, lots of pay, terrific.
Not really.
And really, who got in their way? Nobody got in their way. It was like the second coming to lots of people,
Nobody
sadly.
outed them, no hit pieces in the media.
But also no leaking from the NSC,
right,
which we have faced from week one. I mean, the president was on calls with Bannon will tell you, he was there at the time. I mean, the president was on phone calls with the leaders of Mexico and Australia, and the calls leaked. That's crazy. That was something we never could have seen coming. Who would do that? Who thinks so little of their country and their job and our president, perhaps, that they would do that? And we saw it again when Ambassador Kislyak and some other Russian diplomat were in the Oval Office. We saw it again recently. You see it again with the so-called whistleblower. You see it with some people up on Capitol Hill. Somehow their interpretation of someone else's conjecture based on someone else's insinuation assumption is relevant in removing a democratic elected president. It's not. And so that's what we've been up against from the beginning. But John, man, you cannot go back in time. Close your eyes and remember election night 2016, and remember how different things were once Bannon and I came on board. I know he likes to take all the credit.
No, it's good.
But,
it was totally different.
And that's great. People like to do that. It doesn't even matter. But think of how things were chugging along. Think about working for two candidates, Donald Trump and Mike Pence, who were willing to go 6-7 places a day and win this election. And think of how he's connecting with the grassroots. Hillary's taken off 5 days before the last debate and lost it anyway. Blah, blah, blah. Go back and think how assured everyone was. We have a collection of clips in my office that's just hysterical. You're welcome to them anytime, or you can wait for my book. I mean, these and the sequel, these media, Donald Trump now has a 0% chance of winning. Hillary Clinton is not even mentioning Donald Trump's name anymore.
Most of the people,
and so imagine
most
he wins.
Of the people from the RNC in Trump Tower who already had their resumes dusted off. I mean,
correct.
We were there.
And some of them were rewarded with really big jobs in the West Wing and
yeah.
making my life miserable. So
is that in your book?
Well, it will be. I'm not writing a book now. I'm working for the president, working for the country.
When it comes.
But
what are you going to do in his second term?
Whatever he wants me to do.
You'll stay,
meaning,
right?
when I say whatever he wants me to do, if he wants me to be counselor to the president, if he wants me to move out or move on to something else, I'll do that. Any way I can support his agenda, because his agenda is helping America. There's no question. I lead the drug crisis here at the White House. We now have the first decline in overdose deaths due to drugs in 30 years, since 1990. Think about that. 5.1% overall, John and Ann, but in hardest hit states like West Virginia down 9%, New Hampshire down 11%, Pennsylvania down 23% from its peak, Ohio down 24% from its peak. That's because of the president's leadership.
Major campaign story.
That's because
and what you've done on the opioid.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just, and now it's math, but it's also got a lot to do with securing the border. If the president never even mentioned a human being crossed the border, he'd be within his rights to say secure that border, because the amount of illicit drugs pouring over our southern border and through our own mail and through other ports of entry and coming directly into our communities and our kids' bodies is unseemly. And he's trying to stop it. So he's invested in interdiction and law enforcement, prevention, education, treatment, and recovery. The last president ignored it. I know your viewers don't read the Washington Post. They probably all cancel their subscription along with the White House. But they should pull up something called the fentanyl failure. It was a beautifully done piece earlier this year, expose by the Washington Post. And they lay the blame for the drug crisis at the feet of President Obama, that he just ignored it, just looked the other way. And here we are. But this is a president, just one example. Look what he's done with trade, with Japan, with Korea, what he's doing with China. Everybody else ignored China. $500 billion trade deficit with the second largest economy in the world. He doesn't want these forced technology transfers anymore, stealing our intellectual property. So now they're buying chicken. Now they're buying beef. They've been buying beef. They've been buying pork. They're buying chicken.
Chicken feet.
That's right.
Well, I don't want them. And so, we've had a problem in this country for years. How do you move the whole bird? And they're buying the whole bird.
Feet.
They're buying the bird. That's good.
We just heard that.
And that's because of Donald Trump, by the way. So what he's doing there is what he wants to do with USMCA. Get this. It's embarrassing to the United States of America that Canada and Mexico have signed off on this deal. And the United States of America Congress can't do it. Folks, split the screen. You know what they're doing? They're trying to impeach the Democratic elected president and remove him from office because they don't have a clue how to beat him at the ballot box. Not a clue. If they knew who could beat him, they'd put all their energy behind that person, all their legislation, all their issues, all the king's horses, king's men, and money behind that person. If they knew how to do it. They don't know how to do it. Look at what they're doing. They're trying to remove your president, and look at what they're not doing. They're not doing infrastructure, USMCA, drug pricing reduction. They're not doing anything.
All right, final two things. I just got to remind everybody, one of the best conference calls I was on during the campaign, I remember you got a conference call one day, and you said, no more national polling as of today. Remember that?
Yeah, he did,
Conference
and we
call
never
yet?
did it.
No more.
Never
Done.
did it.
Don't ask.
Never did
Not
national
doing it.
polling.
No more. No more
the
national
media
polling.
continued to do national polling. Remember the ABC News poll?
Yeah.
Eric Trump, Jason Miller, and I went to ABC News. We invited Ben, and he didn't come. We went over to ABC News in October, late October. 2 weeks after Access Hollywood, the ABC News poll came out. I said to Eric Trump, you should go on ABC's Sunday show. I won't go. You go instead. Seth also said, we'd love to have him. He went on and he said, we don't trust your poll. We went over to ABC, met with all their executives. He said, we don't trust their poll. And I said, you know what's wrong with your poll? It's a national poll. 50, it was 50-38 Hillary over. Nobody cares about the national polls. And there was no poll that was legitimate that really had Hillary above 50 staying there and had Trump under 40. We're just not that way. Our elections are not that way, John. But what I said to them was, our state polls, we are focused on, watch what we're doing. I mean, it wasn't a big mystery. We were sending them to states, and people like Bad and then Bossy and I in charge of the schedule, where the candidates were going to go. Why were we at the top levels of the campaign in charge of the schedule? Because Donald Trump and Mike Pence were our two greatest assets. We didn't have the money. We didn't have the staff. We were under-resourced, understaffed. He was our greatest asset, and Pence right behind him. So putting them, you could just follow where we were going based on where they were picking up steam in the states. So our thing, and I said it a million times on air, I know other people say they knew he was going to win, but I have a living, breathing video catalog forevermore of what I thought every single day. And I'd get on the TV while everybody else was sleeping, or I'd be on it while they were going to sleep, and I'd say some iteration of the following. Well, we're going to the states where Obama won them twice. They've elected a Republican statewide in 2012 or 2014, so we know they're not allergic to Republicans. They have a governor, senator, or both. And where Hillary Clinton has not been at 50% and stayed there in statewide polling. So that leads us to Ohio, Iowa, North Carolina, Florida, Colorado, New Hampshire, Nevada, yes, New Mexico.
Iowa.
But most importantly, yes, Iowa, most importantly, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan. They had all elected Republican governors. They had
Right.
Republican senators.
Right.
Scott Walker had been elected 3 times in 5 years.
Right.
And so it wasn't a mystery what we were doing, and it was not based on national polls. And these same national polls want to tell you about the president's approval rating and impeachment. And remember the other thing I said in July 2016 to international derision. I coined, before I was campaign manager, I was already in the campaign, the hidden undercover Trump voter. It's not because people are embarrassed to say they vote for Donald Trump. They're quite happy with it. They just don't want to argue at the Thanksgiving table next week. They just don't want to have an argument with their circle of life. You know, their family members, their friends, their coworkers. And there are more hidden Trump voters now, I guarantee you. There are a lot of people that don't want to argue. You're a woman, you're ready for Trump, you're Hispanic, you're a millennial, blah, 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 blah. They also breathe air and have neurons that work in their brain and see what a great economy this is. See that if you want a small business owner, aspiring or current, he's the guy for you. See what he's trying to do to renegotiate trade deals around the globe, keep us all more peaceful and prosperous, public safety. This president has given the resources and the respect to the military, to law enforcement, to veterans that they deserve and that they needed. And people see that and they like that. We have 157 federal judges and counting who don't make up the laws that go along, who aren't beholden to polls and political pressure. They're reading the Constitution, and Americans read along with them. And in the Constitution, I'd like to see where it is that you can have an impeachment inquiry where the President of the United States can't even have his own lawyers in the room. You have a parking ticket, you bring counsel with you. This is a disgrace, and people see it for what it is. But wait till they get to the Senate, if they ever get to the Senate. We'll be ready for that.
Kellyanne, we thank you.
It's a pleasure. God bless you.
Thank you for being so
Give
nice.
my best to my friends, Corey, Bannon, and the rest. Jason Miller.
And
Miss
they're
him.
all there.
You got
And
it.
thanks for being so nice to our son, Joseph, when he
Your
was at
son's the
wedding.
greatest. God bless him. Give him my best.
You
Take
spent
care.
10 minutes with him. Thank you.
Bye-bye.